Ladies and gentlemen, listen carefully because this might sting, but it will set you free. You keep saying you have faith in God, faith in your future, in abundance. But let me ask you this, where's the evidence? Faith is not just what you believe in your head or what you feel in your heart. Faith is what you do. The word says faith without works is dead. You know what that means. Faith without action is useless. Faith without movement is bankrupt. Faith without discipline is a nice Instagram quote, but it won't change your life, and it certainly won't change your bank account. Faith is proven by action, not intention. Too many people walk around saying they believe in greatness, abundance, and success, yet their lives are marked by hesitation and inactivity. They confuse desire with discipline. They think that because they have good thoughts and strong emotions, something magical will happen. But faith is not about what you say, it's about what you do. If you believe in a vision but refuse to move toward it, your belief is hollow. If you trust in a promise but sit still waiting for someone else to make it real, your trust is empty. Faith is a verb. It requires movement. It demands risk. It insists on showing up in the physical world, not just living in your head. You can have all the affirmations written on your bathroom mirror. You can journal every morning and declare abundance over your life. But until you take concrete steps that align with what you claim to believe, nothing changes. The gap between your words and your works exposes whether your faith is alive or dead. You say you believe you can build a successful business, but when an opportunity comes to invest in your skills, you shrink back. You say you believe God will supply all your needs, yet you operate every day in fear, hoarding what little you have instead of sowing and creating. You say you believe you're capable of greatness, but you spend hours scrolling, procrastinating, and indulging in distractions. That's not faith. That's fantasy dressed up like faith. Faith doesn't wait for certainty. Faith steps out in the face of uncertainty. It doesn't demand all the answers before moving forward. It takes what little you have and multiplies it through action. A farmer doesn't stand in his field saying, "I believe in a harvest," but never puts seed in the ground. He knows belief without planning produces nothing. In the same way, you can't stand on the sidelines of your own life and expect results because you say you believe. Intention feels good. It gives you the illusion of progress. You can talk about your dreams for years and feel accomplished because you've thought about them so deeply, but intentions don't pay bills. Intentions don't change legacies. Intentions don't build wealth. Actions do. Faith requires that you leave the safety of intentions and move into the uncertainty of execution. You might be afraid to fail. That fear is proof that your faith hasn't yet been activated. Faith and fear can't coexist in the same space. One will choke the life out of the other. The moment you start moving, even when you don't feel ready, even when it doesn't make sense, your faith comes alive. Faith isn't about seeing the full staircase. It's about taking the first step and trusting the next one will appear. Every great achievement begins with an act of faith. Someone dared to believe enough to take action. They wrote the book. They launched the product. They made the call. They invested the money. They didn't wait until they felt confident. They acted, and confidence came as a reward for moving. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to move anyway. You may say, "But I don't have enough knowledge yet. I don't have enough money yet. I don't have enough connections yet." Faith doesn't ask if you have enough. Faith says, start with what you have and it will multiply. Waiting for perfect conditions is a recipe for staying stuck. There will never be a perfect time. Faith creates the time. Faith creates the opportunity. Faith creates the momentum that your intentions never will. When you believe something strongly enough, you can't sit still. You can't remain passive. Real faith compels you to act. It disrupts your comfort zone. It forces you to make moves that don't make sense to people who are still sitting on the couch wishing for change. Faith without action is not faith at all. It's just a good idea that never had the courage to live. Prayers don't replace preparation and discipline. People love to pray for success, for abundance through, but then they act as if their prayer alone is the work. They fold their arms, close their eyes, and expect God or the universe to drop blessings into their laps without lifting a finger. That is not how increase works. Prayer is not a substitute for doing the work. It is a catalyst, but not the completion. You cannot pray your way past laziness. You cannot pray your way around a lack of skill. You cannot pray your way out of poor habits. If you want to see results, you have to prepare, you have to discipline yourself, and you have to align your actions with the things you've been asking for. There are people who pray for financial freedom while living like financial slaves. They pray for a successful business, but never study marketing, never learn sales, never invest in their growth. They pray for more opportunities, yet ignore or mismanage the ones already in their hands. Prayer is powerful, but it was never meant to replace responsibility. It was never meant to become an excuse for inaction. That you can't expect God to bless what you're unwilling to build. Preparation positions you for the opportunities you're praying about. Imagine asking for rain but refusing to plow the field. Imagine asking for clients but refusing to develop the competence that would serve them. When you prepare, you demonstrate that you are ready to receive. When you prepare, you align your capacity with your calling. The truth is, Some people's prayers aren't being answered because they had developed the character to handle the blessing they're asking for. $1 million idea would destroy a person who still manages $100 poorly. A platform of influence would crush someone who refuses to discipline their emotions and their time. Discipline is the bridge between desire and manifestation. Without discipline, your life is ruled by feelings. And feelings are terrible leaders. Discipline teaches you to do the right thing when you don't feel like it. Discipline makes you study when your mind wants entertainment. Discipline makes you save when your impulses want to spend. Discipline makes you wake up and move when your body says sleep. Prayer will give you vision, but discipline will build the vessel to carry that vision. People love to declare, God will make a way. Yes, they see the strength of but he often makes the way of those willing to walk it. He opens doors, but you still have to walk through them. You still have to carry the weight. You still have to show up on the days you don't feel motivated. Too many are waiting for motivation to strike, but discipline doesn't wait for motivation. Discipline creates momentum that motivation alone can never sustain. Preparation also creates confidence. The more prepared you are, the less fear can paralyze you. Fear thrives where there is a lack of preparation. When you've studied, when you've practiced, when you've sharpened your skills, you don't need to fake confidence. It rises naturally because you know you're ready. You can pray for courage, but courage is often the byproduct of preparation meeting opportunity. Prayer is asking for the door to open. Preparation is what makes sure you're ready to walk through it. Discipline is what keeps you walking long enough to reach the other side. Without those two, prayer becomes wishful thinking. People say they're waiting on God. But in reality, God is waiting on them to prepare and discipline themselves for what they've been asking for. Wealth flows to those who solve problems and serve others. Money does not show up because you want it, need it, or even pray for it. Money is a reward for value delivered, and value always comes from solving problems. The greater the problems you solve, the greater the wealth that flows in your direction. People don't pay you for showing up. They pay you for making their lives easier, better, or more productive. If you want to attract more money, you have to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a creator. Consumers focus on what they can get. Creators focus on what they can give. Every dollar in your bank account right now came from solving someone's problem. It doesn't matter whether you sold a product, offered a service, or worked a job. Money exchanged hands because you contributed to someone's need or desire. If you want more dollars, you need to expand your capacity to identify and solve bigger problems. Broke people often complain about the problems around them, while wealthy people see those same problems as opportunities. The question isn't whether there are enough opportunities in the world. The question is whether you've developed the eyes to see them and the courage to act on them. Service is the foundation of wealth. If you hate serving people, you will repel money. Serving doesn't mean being subservient or letting people walk over you. Serving means adding value at a level that creates transformation for others. It means focusing on what others need and figuring out how you can provide it in a way that's effective and scalable. When you serve well, you don't have to chase money. Money will begin to chase you. People are naturally drawn to those who solve their problems with excellence. There's a reason the wealthiest people in the world are also the biggest problem solvers. Tech innovators solve problems of communication, access, and productivity. Real estate developers solve housing problems. Entertainers solve boredom problems. You don't have to be famous or have $1 billion idea. But you do need to identify whose life you're making better and how you're doing it. If you can't answer that question clearly, your income will always be limited because money is a reflection of the value you bring. Some people stay broke because they keep trying to avoid problems instead of leaning into them. They avoid hard conversations, avoid learning new skills, avoid the friction that comes with growth. But money lives on the other side of problems. If you run from problems, you run from wealth. To increase your income, increase your tolerance for solving bigger and more complex challenges. You don't get paid for how hard you work. You get paid for how effectively you think and execute to creation. Serluging others is not about giving everything away for free either. Service and compensation are not enemies, they're partners. When you serve at a high level, you deserve to be compensated at a high level. There is no honor in undervaluing yourself. If you don't place a value on your service, don't be surprised when others don't either. Wealth creation is not selfish when it's tied to service, because the more wealth you have, the more problems you can solve and the more people you can impact. Wealth flows to problem solvers because solving problems requires creativity, courage, and consistency. It forces you to grow beyond your current limits and to focus on contribution rather than consumption. Instead of asking, why am I not making more money? Ask, whose life am I changing and how can I do it better? The size of the problems you solve will determine the size of the rewards you receive. Fear disguised as humility keeps you broke. It sounds noble when people say they don't want too much. They're just trying to get by, or they don't need wealth because they're content. But often that's not humility speaking. It's fear in a costume. It's the fear of failing, being judged, fear of stepping into responsibility, fear of being seen trying and coming up short. People call it humility because it sounds virtuous, but the truth is, It's an excuse to stay small. Staying small feels safe. It doesn't require risk. It doesn't invite criticism, and it doesn't demand growth. But staying small also keeps you broke, stuck, and ineffective at making an impact. Real humility isn't about playing small. Real humility is recognizing that we're given gifts, talents, and opportunities, and you have a responsibility to multiply them. Fear whispers, what if I'm not enough? What if people laugh? What if I lose everything? Humility says, it's not about me, it's about serving others with what I've been given. But fear dressed up as humility will have you hiding your talent in the ground, convincing yourself that staying in biz is somehow righteous. It is not. You were created to be fruitful, to produce, to expand. Playing small doesn't honor your creator. Playing small doesn't help your family, your community, or the people you were called to serve. People who truly understand humility know that their life is not about their comfort zone. They know they have to step out, take risks, and grow into someone capable of carrying more. They fear will keep you clutching what little you have because it tells you if you risk it, you'll lose it. Humility will have you open your hands and release what you have so it can multiply. Many people avoid pursuing wealth because they're afraid of what others will think. They've been taught that wanting more is greedy, that being ambitious is prideful, that charging for their services is selfish. So they shrink their vision to match the opinions of people who are just as stuck as they are. They tell themselves they're being humble when they refuse to raise their prices, expand their reach, or promote their gifts. But refusing to grow doesn't serve anyone. Fear convinces them to stay silent about their ideas, to stay in jobs they hate, to keep their businesses small because they don't want to appear arrogant. Fear also causes people to waste time overthinking. They analyze every move to death, waiting for perfect clarity before they act. They say, I'm just being careful. But careful is often code for paralyzed. They confuse humility with hesitation, thinking it's better to do nothing than risk making a mistake. But mistakes are where growth happens. Mistakes are where wisdom is born. Refusing to act out of fear of failure isn't humility. It's pride in disguise because it's still focused on self, on protecting your ego from the possibility of looking foolish. When you see wealth in the hands of people who solve problems, you have to decide whether you will be inspired or intimidated. Fear disguised as humility will make you criticize what you could be learning from. It will make you stay broke while convincing yourself that you're morally superior. They see the strength evil, but money is not evil. Money is a magnifier. It amplifies who you already are. If you're generous, wealth will amplify your generosity. If you're a servant leader, wealth will amplify your service. Hiding from wealth doesn't make you humble. It makes you ineffective. You can't change the world from a position of lack. You can't fund missions, build businesses, or create jobs if you refuse to grow past your fear. Fear will always come dressed in language that sounds safe and spiritual, but it's still fear. And as long as fear is leading your decisions, your potential remains locked away and your wallet stays empty. Your financial increase requires sowing, not just hoping. Many people sit back and wait for abundance to show up in their lives as if wishing hard enough will bring it to their door. They talk about how they're believing for a breakthrough, how they're hoping for a shift, how they're praying for a harvest. But there's a universal principle that be bypassed. You cannot reap where you have not sown. Hoping is not sowing. Wishing is not sowing. Even praying alone is not sowing. Sowing requires action, sacrifice, and consistency. It requires planting seeds even when you're not sure how or when they'll grow. Sowing is the principle of putting value into the ground so that greater value can come back to you. It's about investment. You invest your time, your money, your energy, your skills, and your attention into something that can multiply. People often say they're waiting for more money to start giving, investing, or building. Think they need to receive first before they can plant. But that's backwards. Increase is not given to those who wait. It's given to those who plant. The seed comes before the harvest. If you eat your seed or hold on to it out of fear, you forfeit the future harvest that could have changed your life. Sowing is uncomfortable because it requires release. They see the strength of the you can't sow while clinging tightly to what you have. That's why so many people stay stuck. They're too afraid to let go of what's in their hands. They see the strength of this. So they never experience the multiplication that happened. You plant it in the right soil. You want to grow financially, but you're unwilling to invest in learning new skills, building relationships, or starting that business idea. You want a bigger return, but you're still thinking small when it comes to what you're willing to plant. There's no shortcut to this principle. Farmers don't stand in empty fields hoping crops will grow without planting anything. They don't talk about how badly they want to harvest while leaving their seed in the bag. They understand that the only way to activate increase is to put seed in the ground and trust the process. Money works the same way. They see the strength of you. You can't keep consuming everything you get and expect to build wealth. You can't keep spending every dollar on comfort and entertainment and expect to see financial freedom. If you don't sow, you won't grow. Some people confuse saving with sowing. Saving is important, but it's not sowing. Saving is storing what you already have. Sowing is releasing what you have into something that can grow. The difference is in the multiplication. A savings account alone won't make you wealthy because it doesn't multiply fast enough to outpace inflation or create new opportunities. Sowing into your education, your skills, your business, or other people's lives can create a return that changes generations. Sowing also tests your mindset. It forces you to confront scarcity thinking. If you're afraid there won't be enough, you'll hold back and hoard. But sowing requires faith in the principle of increase. It requires believing that there is more than enough, that what leaves your hand doesn't leave your life, it goes into your future. Scarcity makes you eat the seed and forfeit the harvest. Abundance thinking makes you plant the seed knowing it's coming back multiplied. Financial growth is not accidental. It is the result of intentional sowing. You cannot outpray the principle of sowing and reaping. You cannot fast your way out of the responsibility to plant. You can't ask for an abundant harvest in your finances if you refuse to do the work of putting something into the ground. The size and quality of what you sow determines the size and quality of what comes back to you. God gives power to get wealth, but you must activate it or use his power wasted. Many people sit and wait for wealth to fall from the sky, thinking if it's meant to be, it will somehow show up in their lives. But the ability to produce already inside you, it was placed there for a purpose. That power doesn't manifest itself. It's potential energy, and potential energy only becomes kinetic when you move. You don't pray for a tree and expect one to grow without planting a seed. You don't ask for strength and expect your muscles to grow while sitting still. In the same way, you can't ask for wealth and refuse to activate the power that creates it. You were designed to create, to produce, innovate, to build. That creative power is the raw material of wealth. It's not just about money. It's about solving problems, serving others, and multiplying what's in your hands. Too many people underestimate what's already been given to them. They look at their circumstances and assume they're disqualified from abundance. They think they're too uneducated, too poor late in life, too inexperienced. But the power to get wealth is not limited by your current situation. It's limited by your willingness to use it. Activation requires effort. It requires stepping out of comfort and into the arena of risk and reward. Having power is not enough if you refuse to engage it. A farmer with seeds in his pocket and fertile soil in front of him will still starve if he never puts the seed in the ground. A person with an idea, a gift, or a calling will still live in lack if they never take the first step to activate it. Power unused produces nothing. You can't blame God for not blessing what you never built. You can't ask for increase in your finances while refusing to develop the skills that create income. You can't complain about lack when you're sitting on talents you buried out of fear or laziness. The truth is, most people are not waiting on God, is waiting on them. He's waiting on them to recognize what they already have and to use it. Waiting feels safe, but it's a trap. It keeps you passive. Activation feels risky because it forces you to take ownership of your results. The power to get wealth is not magic. It's not about luck or chance. It's about taking what's in your head, in your hands, and putting it to work in the marketplace. When you solve problems and serve others with excellence, money flows a byproduct. If you despise work, if you avoid responsibility, if you reject the process, you block the very flow of wealth you're praying for. Wealth is not the result of wishing. They see the result of working wisely with the power you've been given. There's a difference between power and permission. You don't have to ask permission to activate what's in you. You don't have to wait for someone to validate your gift or call your idea perfect. The power to create is already there. You activate it through faith expressed in action. Action is what flips the switch. Action is what turns dormant potential into tangible results. You might be sitting on ideas that transform your life and bless others, but if you never move, those ideas will stay locked inside you. The graveyard is full of unused power, unlaunched businesses, unwritten books, and unfulfilled callings. Just don't let your potential die with you. Activation means stepping out even when you don't feel ready, even when the path isn't clear, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed.